My name is Casey Ruff. I'm a personal trainer and nutrition coach. I have been certified as a personal trainer since March of 2007. I am the host of Boundless Body Radio, which is a podcast that I started in October of 2020. We now have over 500 episodes. We release episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we're generating over 300,000 downloads. I guess we've generated 300,000 downloads in the course of running the show, which has been fantastic. Steve and I've had the pleasure of hosting you. Rich, I'd love to host you sometime on the show as well. And yeah, I'm the co-founder with my wife of a personal training company called Boundless Body. We started our company in the pandemic when our corporate gym kind of went away, and the program that I was managing also went away, which was dealing with measuring people's metabolic rates. And so that's kind of what I wanted to present on today. And I've got some interesting slides. I don't often get to show people this kind of thing. And so I've got some visual aids that might kind of help people understand. And I think it's quite relevant from what we just heard from Jonathan about how we use our calories, how our metabolism works. And Rich, exactly what you said. How do we become really good at what we should be really good at, which is burning fat? Fortunately, with over a decade of working on a metabolic cart, I got a front row seat as to see like what would actually happen when people started changing their diets. And yeah, saw lots of really cool results because of that.
Well, should we dive into your presentation? I think it's great that you come with a presentation, and let's go for it. I think that's
figure it out. Then absolutely.
Yes, fantastic. Brilliant.
Okay, excellent. So as I started my career as a personal trainer, it was pretty soon after I'd started as a trainer that my manager realized I knew a lot about heart rate monitors with my background in cycling. And so they basically trained me to run what is called metabolic assessments, metabolic tests. And basically we would use something called a metabolic cart, which you can kind of see here. You would hook up to a mask on somebody, and basically whether they were resting or whether they were doing some form of exercise and slowly ramping up, we would be able to measure a few different things, which is kind of cool when we're talking about the breath. The breath really holds a lot of secrets as to how many calories we're burning at a given time. So that's primarily what we would do for the resting test, is measure how quickly somebody would burn a certain amount of calories. And then with what we call the active metabolic test, we would be able to tell how that would change as somebody was ramping up their heart rate. Basically, it's like a VO2 test, if you're familiar with that, or you've seen that happen at a gym or on a Gatorade commercial or something like that. So it was pretty cool. I was able to measure people's metabolic rates. And if this looks very antiquated, it's because it absolutely is. This was the kind of information that we would present to people, especially when I was first getting started back in 2007, where the number of calories that you would eat would be a direct correlation with the calories you would burn. Therefore, everything for weight management would come down to a formula, right? Has anybody ever done this and found out that it actually doesn't really work? There's 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. And so by the math of things, if we measured your total metabolic rate, the total number of calories that you would burn in a given day with exercise and with the lifestyle you have, whether you're, working at an office job or you're shucking boxes at UPS, if you just took that number and ate 500 calories less than that in 1 week, 7 days, that would add up to that 3,500 calories. And so we would find that people would lose 1 pound per week. And you would just continue to do that, lose 1 pound per week, 1 pound per week, 1 pound per week, until you reached your weight goal. Again, has anybody ever noticed that that works in a sustainable way? It's ridiculous. We notice that this happens. I love that this says fad diet transformation, which to me, a fad diet is the diet that most people are prescribed, the standard American diet. It's a fad. And yes, you can lose weight. You can lose weight by dropping your calories down. There is an after impact where you end up gaining the weight. And if we go back to this number, we just assume that this number here, this resting energy expenditure number, is always going to stay static. It's always going to stay the same. And if that were the case, then yes, we could probably treat this like a math problem, get people to lose all the weight that they needed to just by, measuring the calories and making sure that people were eating the certain right amount of calories that put them in a caloric deficit. The problem is this number changes. This number is not the same. The resting energy expenditure number will drop. If you start eating less calories, you will teach yourself to burn less calories. And then we would see a drop in this number. And that's why most diets end up failing. And like I said, we get this kind of effect. So I'll pause there to see if anybody has any questions so far. We good so far?
Are you talking in the chat?
All good.
No, if you guys have any questions, we're fine.
Oh, no,
okay.
we're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So the other test The other test that we would run would be called an active metabolic test. And this would show as somebody is ramping up as far as their heart rate and intensity, we would show how many calories somebody would be burning in each one of their unique heart rate zones. So what you see here is just an example. This wouldn't necessarily apply to the average person watching. These are all very unique and individual, but we would show how as you work harder during exercise, you will burn more and more calories. And I think that's pretty intuitive for most people. If you're doing a really hard workout in 30 minutes, you would be burning more calories than, say, another person who is maybe just doing a really easy workout, maybe just going on a walk. And yes, the harder you work, you can see as the heart rate goes up and you move through all the zones 1 through 5, you are burning more calories. That's certainly the case. But if you look to the far right, you're going to see percentage splits between what fuel you are actually burning between fat and carbohydrates. And that's what our metabolic carts were able to tell us, is not just the total number of calories that somebody was burning, but also where are those calories coming from? Are you burning fat or are you burning carbohydrates as your primary fuel source? And as you ramp up your intensity during exercise, you are literally burning a smaller and smaller and smaller percentage of fat for your energy and burning a much greater percentage of your energy from carbohydrates. Now, when I was a cyclist, this is also when I kind of started my career as a personal trainer, you know, we were brought up on the notion that every endurance athlete needed tons of carbohydrates. You had to have carbohydrates. I would eat before I went on a race. I would stuff my jersey pockets with all kinds of goos and gels and all kinds of crap like this. Like, this is what my diet looked like, you know, 10, 15 years ago when I was racing competitive cycling. And this is what we were told to do. Lots of pasta, lots of bread, the oatmeal before the ride. Those, oh man, I remember the kind of like really way too ripe bananas going kind of nasty in your jersey pocket, like on a hot day, and like trying to pull that out and snack on it on a ride. It was so gross. And that was what we were told to do. And so we really didn't know any better. When you are working at a very high rate, you're burning lots of carbohydrates, and carbohydrates tend to run out. So you want to top them off as you are exercising, essentially, especially at those high intensities. And that's all I knew for a very, very long time. And I didn't really understand, looking at these, you know, heart rate zones and understanding the percentage of fat versus the percentage of carbohydrates that somebody could burn. I really didn't understand that that could be manipulated and that you could actually help people increase the amount of fat that they were burning and thus decrease the amount of carbohydrates that they were burning, and why that would be important. And I want to move to this next slide, which in my opinion is one of the most important slides on this presentation. This was taken from a document that I would present to people when I was showing them the heart rate zones and how they use calories. When I was training other personal trainers on metabolic carts and how to use these to get great results and interpret the results for their clients, I would make the people that I would train stop at this, you know, this diagram here that you see and really spend some time thinking about the implications of what this means. So what you're seeing here is the number of calories from carbohydrates that the body stores. So really important to say, what we've been talking about so far has been burning calories. Well, this is the other side of things. This is now storing calories. How does the body store its calories? The top number you're going to see is calories from carbohydrates. Now, this is based on the average female, for example. So that number is fixed. Technically, that number can be a few hundred calories higher, a few hundred calories lower, but essentially it means that we have a fixed storage capacity for carbohydrates, and that's based on your muscle mass. So generally speaking, you're going to see that number somewhere around 1,500 calories for carbohydrates the body has capacity to store. And then if we look at the next number, those are the calories of fat that this person is storing based on their weight and their body fat percentage. It's also very interesting to see that that number is 10 times higher, or I'm sorry, 100 times higher of stored calories from fat than the calories from carbohydrates. And I do want to point out that this woman that I did this test on, you can see from her picture, she's actually fairly lean. So she's not an overweight person. She has a pretty normal body fat percentage, and she still has 110,000 calories of stored fat on the body that can be used for fuel. Now you can see again, if we go back up to the calories from carbohydrates that are stored, that is a top level. That is the maximum number that most females could store. Again, with males, if they got more muscle mass, that number is probably going to be closer to 2,000 calories from carbohydrates. But that's it. You can't exceed that level of storage of carbohydrates, even if you take in more carbohydrates. So for example, we were always told the night before a race, we needed to carbo load, right? You need to eat more carbohydrates and you know, store up that tank. Well, the problem is, again, that storage capacity is so limited. Best case, the very best case scenario that you can do is fill up that storage capacity everything else that you consume that's carbohydrates is going to spill out and be stored in calories from fat. So that's where the body changes the carbohydrates, it switches them in the liver into triglycerides and stores them as calories of fat. And that's why you see that number be so high, over 100,000 calories that this person is storing of fat calories. And just to reiterate, this person was not necessarily overweight. They weren't very fat. Like, that number can go up and up and up and up. It could be 200,000, 300,000, 500,000. You know, the most obese person you see, that might be over 600,000 calories the fat that the body is just packing on and packing on and packing on, because it simply does not have the capacity to store any more calories from carbohydrates. So I think this is really important to understand how our bodies work and how we can be extremely healthy. Before I proceed, I'll stop again and just see if anybody has any questions.
All good. Keep on going. All good for me. Excellent. Steve, you happy? Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so when we were talking about athletic performance, we were talking about the need of the body for carbohydrates. So if I go back here, let's assume that I am working out in a high heart rate zone. I'm working really hard as a cyclist. I'm pedaling a lot. I'm burning lots of calories of carbohydrates. But we go back here to see that the body does not store endless amounts of carbohydrates, which is why most endurance athletes at some point or another end up learning what it's like to bonk. When you run out of those stored calories from carbohydrates, you're done. And I'd like to have the comparison of a tanker. What if you saw a gasoline tanker pulled off the side of the road? It was carrying unleaded fuel that was completely full, all the way up to capacity. Yet the engine of the tanker was a diesel, meaning that the engine was not suited to burn the stored energy in the back of the tank. It only had the small storage space that it has on it with diesel fuel. If that were to run out, how weird and ironic would it be that this tanker is full of fuel that the body is not suited to be able to use? It doesn't know how to use it. The engine is not made for that. Again, it's such an interesting example that I think is very ironic, that shows the fact that we need to teach ourselves to be fat burners. And when we do, we have access to the greatest amount of energy that we can store, which is energy from fat. Like I said, if you are overweight, if you're over fat, that number might be very, very high. Even if you are racing in the Tour de France, which is going on right now, you might be almost no body fat percentage. You still have tens of thousands of calories of stored fat that the body can use. And that is an alternative to the carbohydrates. So not only are you teaching yourself to get rid of the fat you already have, you are saving yourself from burning through all of your calories of carbohydrates so that you can have better and better and better endurance. So I just want to show you what that would look like. Here's an example of the same person who did the same test done at a different interval when they started to change their diet and they started to change their workout program. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But you can see the same person over time has taught themselves to burn greater and greater and greater percentages of fat for their fuel. And thus, they've also taught themselves to burn less and less and less of the carbohydrates, which is equally as important. I would assume the person on the right would be able to last much longer if they chose to do endurance sport. I would expect them to be leaner since they are burning through the storage of fat, so they could burn that off much easier and have less of the fat. And I would assume that person is also experiencing much less soreness after workouts. I would expect them to feel like they've got much less carbohydrate cravings because they're not burning through all of them. And you can see the difference is like hundreds of calories in an hour that person is preserving as far as carbohydrates and what it's doing for their fat burning capacity. And again, this is through a change in the diet, which means reducing the carbohydrates that we are consuming and eating. Obviously, I'm partial to a carnivore diet, but lots of fat and lots of protein can help cause this. And it's also by shifting the training to a lower level where you're not overworking, you're not pushing yourself up to the highest levels of intensity all the time. You're doing most of your training at a lower intensity, which most people don't like. They don't feel like they're getting the best results when they're working out a little bit easier, but that will teach them how to become more efficient over time. I do have another example of this. You can see how everything has again shifted once somebody has changed their diet, changed their workout program to teach themselves literally to burn more fat and burn less of their carbohydrates for energy. So far we have talked a lot about performance, right? This is something that can help endurance athletes if you are looking to last a little bit longer in your 10K or your marathon or whatever you're training for. But I also think it's relevant when we start to look at the original test that we first started talking about, which is the resting test. And we're also talking about things like weight loss and fat loss. So this was the original phenomenon that really brought me into the low carbohydrate space. It made me really appreciate what something like a ketogenic or a carnivore diet could do for somebody, especially when it was paired with fasting, when somebody was doing intermittent fasting. This is the phenomenon that I would see, which really broke my brain in the beginning. I couldn't really explain this. What we were used to doing and telling people is exactly what we presented in the beginning, that if you eat less calories, yes, that will work for weight loss, but eventually the body will compensate and reduce its resting metabolic rate. And so we would use the resting metabolic rate as an absolute minimum number of calories somebody should ever eat. So you always want to eat more than that. When people started fasting and they started shifting over to higher fat, lower carbohydrate diets, I started to notice that people would come in with a predicted burn of the resting metabolic rate, where the predicted burn would be hundreds of calories actually less of the number of calories that they were teaching themselves to burn all the time at rest. And I would tell people like, wow, like your metabolism is really good. We're looking at somebody burning 2,600 calories every single day doing nothing. That's a resting metabolic rate. They're just sitting around burning 2,600 calories. That's really amazing. And if you look to the right, you can even see that their ratios of how much fat they're burning is through the roof. They're burning 75% of their calories from fat and really minimizing the percentage of calories that they're burning from carbohydrates. This is exactly what we would want to see. And so I would look at these people and say like, wow, like 2,600 calories. This is really good. This is your minimum number of calories that you need to eat so that we can maintain this. And people would look at me so confused. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't eat that many calories. What do you want me to do? Like, do you want me to go back to Twinkies and drinking soda again? Like, I can get that many calories if I have liquid calories, maybe. But when I start eating fat and protein and focus on that, I can't eat that many calories. Like 10 eggs and a pound of ground beef might be sufficient. And that's far less than the metabolic rate would show us, which again was ultra confusing until we realized that when the body has access to stored fat, when you teach the body to burn fat and not burn carbohydrates as the primary fuel source, your metabolic rate will increase. I saw this over and over and over again. And we would also see that somebody would shift their fat burning percentage to be much higher and their carbohydrate percentage to be much lower. Obviously, this is extremely advantageous if you are trying to lose fat. If you want to get rid of fat, this is the way you want to go. You want to really focus your diet around the proteins and fats and drop out the carbohydrates to about as low as you can tolerate. This is why I'm such a fan of the carnivore diet that really answers all the questions anybody needs to know. If you stick with animal products, you will cause this effect to happen in your body. Your body's metabolism will increase and you will burn off fat at a greater rate. We really noticed this quite a bit when we were doing weight loss contests at the gym that I was working at. This guy really changed my life. I'm so grateful that I was able to do a consultation with him. We sat down in 2018. He was about to do this weight loss contest, which would run for 60 days. And he was kind of telling me that he wanted to lose about 25 pounds. At this point in the picture you're seeing here, it's about halfway through his weight loss journey. He was successful in losing that weight, but he was describing, you know, he was having lots of snacks. He was waking up at 2 in the morning to eat cereal. And at the time I realized like, okay, you're definitely not eating enough fat, at least to get really satiated. And so he started eating more fat. He went away. He got really obsessed with the idea of keto diets because he came back to me about 2 or 3 days later and said, hey, I've already lost like 2 or 3 pounds. What's this keto stuff? And I was like, well, that's pretty great, but I don't really know. And that kind of started me down this pathway. He was able to finish the contest and do really, really well. We got lots of recognition for, you know, being the trainers that helped get him there. But what we decided to do is we had our own cohort of people that we had to turn over as we were doing these 60-day contests. We were doing them 4 times a year. What we did, my wife and I, we shifted from giving the materials that the gym was giving to everybody, which was lots of meals, lots of snacks, lots of shopping lists, tons of food prep. We found some low carbohydrate meal plans and we would give these to people and say like, look, we're going to do some free seminars. We'll teach you how this works over time. But for now, just find the recipes that you love, your family loves, eat them as much as you like. They're low carbohydrate. Find the ones that taste good. Don't count anything. Like Jonathan said, not the biggest fan of counting. And let's just see how things go in this contest. And I just want to show you, this was up until the day that the gym closed when we lost access to everything. Obviously, my program got shut down very first, even before the gym did. It wasn't very advantageous during the pandemic to stand next to a treadmill with somebody breathing really hard with respiration right next to you. But you can see as we track this definitely wasn't like a, a perfectly done study or anything, but we tracked 187 people that did our contest with us, where we gave them the low carbohydrate meal plans. We had excellent compliance. We had over 65% of the people go through the challenge and actually weigh out at the end of the contest. And of all of the weight that we measured that was lost, we measured that 98.1 of those pounds that anybody lost doing our program was coming from fat. I thought that these meal plans would be successful. I thought that they would really help people, and I thought that it would help them understand how to burn fat, but I never dreamed that we would get percentages like this repeatable. And I have to point out too, those 126 people, they were across the board. Some were men, some were women, some were old, some were young. People did yoga. Some people wanted to gain weight and they wanted to add muscle. Other people did want to lose fat and wanted to lose weight. But regardless, when we gave them low carbohydrate meal plans that really focused on protein and fat as the intake, we saw tremendous, repeatable results. And to this day, even though I don't have access to the same metabolic cart, people that follow these principles are able to achieve wonderful results. If we go back and think about, that the slide we showed where we showed the fad diet progression, where people would lose weight and then gain it all back and then some at the end, this is a way that you can teach yourself literally to become a fat burner. We want to teach you how to burn fat and burn off your own fat and use that as energy. You're basically changing the engine of the diesel tanker and making it to be a hybrid. It can run on the diesel. It can also run on the unleaded, and it will not run out. It's able to produce energy for a very, very long time. So if I were to give you a few takeaways from this, I would really recommend that most people really reduce or eliminate their carbohydrates, which means you're left with what we talked about before, fat and protein. Easy way to do that and answer all questions about whether plants are toxic, whether spinach is building up oxalate in your body, go carnivore. It's the only way to tell. And I really love to recommend people, if you don't think you want to commit to a carnivore diet, try one meal. Like one meal of steak and eggs is going to be absolutely delicious and wonderful. And just try that. See how you feel. Are you really full? Are you very satiated? Did you have the need to snack or eat lots of carbohydrates? My guess is no. And if you feel really good, try another one and try another one and try another one. If nothing else, at least start moving in that direction of consuming more fat and more protein. My second tip would be to strength train and get moving. Movement for most people could be something that's really easy. Could be walking, paddleboarding, something that you really enjoy. If you do want to go for performance, I want people to follow what I call the 80-20 rule. So if we go back to these slides where we see heart rate zones, I want people to train at least 80% in their zone 1 or zone 2 or below, somewhere in that range. And if you're going to do any high intensity work, I want that to be at least 20% less of your total amount of what you're doing every single day. If you don't know where your heart rate zones are, that's totally fine. A really great way to calculate what that might be for a really good starting point is using math heart rate calculations. This comes from Dr. Phil Maffetone. He's been doing this for a million years, very, very well. Definitely everything that I saw using metabolic carts correlated really well with his equation, which basically means you want to take 180 minus your age and make sure, again, following that 80-20 rule, you're doing at least 80% of whatever work you're doing in those ranges, somewhere close to 180 minus your age. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, that's also okay. We use a self-selected scale called RPE, or rate of perceived exertion. You want that to be 5 out of 10 most of the time when you're doing any form of exercise. So that's a lot easier than what most people assume. Like I said, most people don't like that, but over time, you'll teach yourself to do a higher and higher workload, meaning you can run faster, bike faster, all the things. And then everything else we recommend is, get great sleep, reduce your stress. I put sleep in there twice. So apparently it's really important. Maybe you need a nap. I don't know. You guys don't need a nap. You guys are going 24 hours. You don't need to sleep in there twice. And just to enjoy your life and not worry too much about the other things. And again, I think a carnivore diet is a really good way to do that. As always, anybody can book a free consultation with us at myboundlessbody.com. You can click on the book now button at any time, and we can always chat or bounce ideas off each other. But that was more or less my presentation about how to become a fat burner.
Brilliant, Casey. Thank you. I think a few people in the chat just didn't really understand why you were using calories so much, but I was trying to explain in the chat that this is what you used to do. And that's how you discovered that it was BS. What was you were being told? I mean, the thing is, there's no point in rewriting your history because that's not how you think anymore. It was just to illustrate that you had the scales moved from your eyes, because when you started to look at the data didn't say the things that you were expecting. I mean, that's it. So a few people just saying, well, we don't talk about calories much, but you did then, didn't you? And that's how it just, you know, it revealed itself. That's all I was trying to say in the chat, because that's where I come from. I was taught all this calorie nonsense and stuff like that, and my brain just didn't see it as factual. It was like, well, hang on a minute, this doesn't make any sense. We've got 50,000 calories of fat and 2,000 calories of glucose. Why does the body use the small amount? What, you know, when you used your big oil tanker thing. So I just wanted to pacify the people in the chat that weren't getting. I didn't think they got the historical thing, that's how you realized what was going on. And of course, in those days, it was all about calories. So you can't rewrite your documents that you've got that were proving basically burning fat was better and all that sort of stuff. And what's the point of deleting the words? Yeah, there's no point in doing that. So yeah, we talk about calories, but the point is, doing that made you realize we should be oxidizing fat. You know, and it's changed the way you think, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's such a fair point, and I really appreciate that. I should have been more clear with that in my presentation. That was the first part of everything that I was explaining, was the stuff that would repeatedly fail. It would fail and fail and fail, and I would sit around and tell my clients they weren't following the advice well enough, they weren't eating enough vegetables, they weren't counting their calories properly, and it wouldn't work for anybody. And by changing the diet in a different way that's really unconventional, it pretty much works for everybody. And now, like you guys, I get to do something that is not recommended, but change lives through, again, something very unconventional, and see it work all the time. It's joyous. It's incredible. Yeah.
I mean, thank you for taking that time out. Have you got any comments, Rich?
Yeah, I think some of the comments were a little bit harsh there, I'll be honest. I mean, people seem to forget that these presentations are made for people who understand calories, who are not as well informed as the rest of us in regards to the ketogenic and carnivore community. So, I mean, you know, to take it with a pinch of salt, it's one of the only metrics that people understand in regards to energy consumption. We can't measure heat, which is, you know, that's basically what we're measuring, and that's what we use is heat, isn't it? But we can't use heat as a metric when we're speaking to Joe Public in regards to weight loss and weight gain. Fantastic presentation. Zone 2 training is fantastic for burning fat. That's where most of 80% of my training comes into in regards to running and riding. One thing that I'd add to that is that it takes time to adapt into fat burning. One of these processes or transporters is the monocarboxylate transporters. We can upregulate monocarboxylate transporters through intense exercise. So we can fast track the body's ability to utilize beta hydroxybutyrate for fuel through intense exercise early on. It's not always recommended because people feel lethargic early on, and obviously due to low sodium concentrations and loss of water, you know, they're feeling a little bit fatigued. But for those who are supplementing or consuming adequate amounts of protein, salts, or even supplementing with things like exogenous ketones, we can burst through that quite early on. There's a way that we can upregulate the MCTs, the monocarboxylate transporters, not to be confused with medium chain triglycerides, but we can upregulate these. And once we're through that, then, the zone 2 training is fantastic. That's where I do most of my training on the bike and the running. Love to get you on my podcast because I've recently come away from last May. I retired from professional bodybuilding, and now I compete in running and cycling. I'm trying to prove to the triathlon community that this is exactly the way forward. And just to reiterate something that you said there, how much time have we got, Steve? Am I a little bit behind? Have we got 2 minutes?
Colt's just come in. I think Colt and Casey know each other. Casey, do you know Colt Milton? Do you know Colt Milton?
From social media. I don't know that we've ever talked to each other.
Well, you carry on, Rich, and I'll get.
I'll smash through this really quickly. So I'm working with another fellow PHC ambassador whose son is a semi-professional cyclist, 22 years old, I believe. Now he's been ketogenic stroke carnivore for maybe 6 to 8 weeks, possibly a bit longer. He recently competed for 4 hours at 368 watts. He was putting out 368 watts on the bike for 4 hours at 91% of VO2 max, which just plays into exactly what you said, but there into percentages in regards to what we can achieve in VO2 max at high intensity. So we're told we can't compete and perform at high intensity, but this is exactly what he is doing at higher intensity than he has ever achieved before on carbohydrate. The body is an incredible machine. Once you become fat adapted and metabolically flexible, and we upregulate these MCTs, the monocarboxyl transporters, we can perform incredible things. And this is what I'm trying to do within the triathlon community in regards to running and cycling. I've only been running and cycling recently, but enough to put this into perspective, my 5K time, and I've been running for a few months only, my 5K time is 18 minutes 45. My half marathon is about one and a half hours. And my FTP on the bike is 259, which works at a 3.6 watts per kilogram. You know, that's not setting the world on fire, but I've literally only been running and cycling for a very short period of time. And I put this, I am not genetically gifted. I put this down to living a ketogenic carnivore lifestyle and utilizing this to my advantage. But fantastic presentation.
Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, loved it. Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
bye, and you pass the baton. You could tag Colt, couldn't you? Can you tag him the other way? Colt, the other way.
It's weird when it's mirrored, right?
Colt, the other way, Colt. No, he's not going to
the other side. The other side.
I always forget if it's mirrored or not.
Thank you. Right,
well,
so
great.
Colt,
Awesome. Cheers, Casey. Well appreciated, man.
Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Absolutely, yeah. My name's Colt Milton. I'm a carnivore bodybuilder and a carnivore coach, and I've been carnivore for about 3-4 years now. Cured me of a very, very severe eating disorder, bulimia specifically. I'm an artist. I guess I would be the best way to summarize what I do for a living, and my view on health, my view on aesthetics, bodybuilding, the carnivore diet. Wow. I mean, you cut out carbs and cut out most of the problematic plants, or just better yet, all plants, and everything else just seems to fall in place. Athletics. I mean, Richard, to your point on your cycling and on your endurance work. I'm a little bit of an endurance athlete too, working through some injuries here and there. And so the endurance hasn't been quite my focus at the moment.
It's not. It's not. These injuries,
but I just feel better in every area of life and in sports. Low carb, to the point to where when someone asks me, hey, I have this question about my diet, in the back of my mind, my whole goal is, how can I get them to get as close to meat based as I can and make it sustainable? It's not, you know, being able to be 100% perfect, I think, is unrealistic for most people. I'm drinking an artificially sweetened beverage right now. Other than that, I'm a pretty good boy. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's you in a nutshell. And of course, you look awesome. So if people haven't seen you before, I'd recommend you go and have a look at supersetyourlife.com, or and also let's put your in the YouTube. There is a description. You can go and have a look at Colt's Instagram, and the pictures are amazing, mate. You look absolutely ripped and
Thank you.
Very fit and healthy. It's great. It's really good. So how did you stumble across carnivore then? I mean, was there influencers that you really loved and thought, yeah, I should follow this person?
Yeah, so it all started when the pandemic hit. I lost my corporate job, like a lot of us did, and I was like, all right, I've done bodybuilding shows, and I'm learning more and more about nutrition. I'm learning more and more about how the human body works, and how to use a health first approach, which being a natural bodybuilder is something that we're extremely passionate about at supersetyourlife.com. And so that's actually when we started supersetyourlife.com. My wife and I looked at each other. We were just like, let's just go all in with fitness and all in with nutrition and see what we can do with it. And that's when I started dabbling with keto. And a lot of us go through that rabbit trail, right? Like we start with the standard American diet, you clean that up a bit, and then you start tracking your calories and everything. You figure out that calories don't even apply to the human body. And so you kind of gravitate past that. You get more into the keto space, and then you're like, wow, you know, I'm feeling better the less carbs I eat and the less plants I eat, and I'm feeling better the more meat that I eat. I think that's how most of us stumble to the carnivore diet, which is why you don't see a lot of people that go meat-based and then go back to being plant-based. But you see people that are plant-based all the time. And just for the record, respect to anybody that does any kind of diet. I'm not here to judge one way or another. But what I've noticed is I rarely, if ever, see somebody go from being meat-based to going back to being plant-based. So we felt like we were on the right track. And then from there, I wasn't able to afford being able to be able to hire a coach or a nutritionist to be able to help me understand a lot of this stuff. And it certainly wasn't what my background was in. My background was in music performance, and athletics and coaching. And so we got to this point to where we were like, okay, we're starting a podcast right now because we want to take this business and take our fitness and our training to the next level. And so we just started interviewing nutritionists, and it became like consultations, and we've been doing that for years now. And so I've just been basically traveling the world with a backpack and my journal and taking notes of what works and what doesn't work. And that's been the last 3 years. And since then, we've just gone all in with carnivore, absolutely not going back. The last 2 months now, I've been on a bit of a modified lion diet. So it's been exclusively beef with the addition of keto bricks, because I do love my keto bricks. So there you go. I guess we could say that's my other carnivore sin. And so I've just been living on nothing but that for the last couple months.
Sick. Yeah, I'm a lover of, spot on. So we used to stock these in the UK.
All right. What flavor is that?
Peanut butter, I think, was it?
That's peanut butter. Because we've got Keto Savage on later. I thought I'd have one handy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I used to stock these for Robert in the UK, but we're renegotiating price terms in regards to importing again, because the price for bringing product in from the States just went skyrocketed, and we couldn't sell these for less than like £15 a brick, which is extortionate amount, and they weren't selling. But big lover of the keto brick, and it's going to be a fun chat with Robert later too. But yeah, it again, it comes back to living the lifestyle and putting these things in as and when that you feel you need to, isn't it? I mean, I think it's take my hat off to where credits due. You instantly admitted that you had an artificial sweetened beverage there, but it's again, it's all about.
It's stevia though. That's not the worst, right?
No, exactly, for sure. And so I create products that contain, stevia and erythritol. Stevia, I agree, is certainly one of the best ones. The electrolytes that we manufacture contain stevia. That's what I consume, on a daily basis. He's going to grab a tub, isn't he?
we're gonna get kicked off the show if we keep this up, man. Sorry, Steven. Because we definitely don't do artificial sweeteners.
When you mention something, people in the chat, it lights up the chat. And many people haven't heard of a keto brick. It's not carnivore. It's not carnivore, but it's Rich, how would you describe the keto brick?
So the keto brick is a 1,000-calorie brick. It's an energy source for people with busy lives who go hiking, and exactly, spot on. So there's 1,000 calories within the brick. If you have a busy day, it's a fantastic supplement or food, even, because it is classed as a food to have with you. I've used them. Again, as we say, we are more strict now in regards to carnivore than we've ever been. But along the journey, I've experimented with lots of things, and these were a fantastic tool for me along the way. The keto brick, on days spent out, of the office and hiking and traveling and whatever else, the keto brick is a fantastic, highly nutrient dense brick. I was going to say bar, but it's a brick full of 1,000 calories. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Again, calories again. I know. Yeah. But this is how they think. There's like 1,000 units of energy. 1,000 units of heat. But,
the problem is that when someone runs a business, they have to use something that people understand.
Exactly.
Right? Robert Sikes and I have spoken about calories, and we know that the world isn't about calories. Mm-hmm. Colt is a recent convert to looking at. I think you've changed all of your training programs, haven't you, and taken the word calories out, haven't you?
Yeah, when I was interviewing Bart K, and about 10 minutes into our conversation, we got on the calorie topic, and he asked me my opinion on calories, and I told him, and he basically blew it out of the water, and I was mad because I was like, he's right. he's right on everything he's saying, and I'm dead wrong. So yeah, we changed all of our client plans. I sent out a mass email to everybody saying we're not tracking calories anymore, and here's why. And I would say I had about 4 or 5 people out of the 20 that we were training kind of push back a little bit. But I said, just go out on faith. Just give it 2 weeks. Don't even think about how many calories you're eating. We're going to go by intuition, and we're going to track protein, and we're going to track fats, but do not treat it as gospel. We need to take this one day at a time and listen to and let your body determine how much to eat and how much not to eat, depending on your goals. And ever since then, I have no idea how many calories any of my clients are tracking, and I certainly don't have any idea how many calories I'm tracking either. Unless somebody asks, then I get annoyed and do the math and tell them how many calories it is if they really want to know.
Did you watch some other videos from some other influencer that helped you?
Yeah, I think this guy named Steven really helped. He lives in the UK. You should check him out. and actually, I've been and so on all the meal plans that we do, I embedded that video, and that's why we recorded that last podcast, Steven, was because that was what I was going to do with it. So now that podcast is literally embedded in every single plan that we send to our clients, so that if they do have a question and the newbies coming in expecting to know. And expecting to use calories as a metric, they find out why we don't do that right off the bat.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to get away. It's good to get away from it, definitely. So, what's your standard way of eating? You doing 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day? What are you up to?
Depends on the day. Right now, I'm 2 weeks out from a guest posing gig, so I'm not expected to have shredded glute striations by any means or anything like that. But I want to do a good job. I'm guest posing for a natural bodybuilding show in Seattle, Washington. And typically I would be doing 2 meals a day, just like every day, just healthy living throughout the year. Typically I prefer 2 meals a day. It's hard to fit everything into one. When I'm cutting, the easiest way for me to cut, if I just want to lose 5 pounds or trim up a bit, is just switch everything to 1 meal a day. And then, and I do that as often as I can. I have days where I just can't make it. I just flat out can't. And it's halfway through the day. I feel like my muscle bellies are eating themselves because I had a particularly harder training session earlier in the day. So then I'll break it up into 2 meals and probably give myself a little bit more ground beef or something at the end of the day if I feel like I need it. So I eat all the food that I'm allotted to eat for the day, and if I still feel like I'm hungry, the choice is ground beef, and that's absolutely it. If ground beef sounds appetizing, that's a good sign that my body probably needs more fuel. If a meat-based pizza or a keto brick or something else sounds appetizing, I mean, those foods sound good all the time, and so it's hard to know for sure if I'm really in tune with my satiety signals that way. But it's a pretty safe bet as long as I'm sticking with just ground beef. You can't go wrong with it. It's hard to
I think being intuitive is vital for this way of eating, actually. And I think just eating when you're hungry, stopping when you're full, really simple. It's really simple. I like this question, and I think we should all have a pop at it, what we think. Okay, so this is the question that no one has answered. If a person hates sweet things, is it genetic or from the environment? Rich, do you want to go first? What's your guess?
Do you know, I wouldn't have a clue. I've met very few people who hate sweet things. Now, I've gone off sweet things now through 10, 11 years of being ketogenic, 4 to 5 of carnivore. But, you know, I certainly loved sweet things early on. I'm trying to think back to my childhood and people that I've worked with. I've worked with, you know, clients who are vegan and vegetarian who, you know, their children hate sweet things. So is it environmental? You know, I'd be inclined to think it's more environmental over genetic, I should imagine. I mean, if we look at our genetic predisposition, then we are fat fuelers, you know, fueled by fat. We've been ketogenic our entire existence. Sweet would have been seasonal at best. So my best guess, and it is purely a best guess based on, you know, educated guess, basically, that it would be environmental. I don't know what the rest of you would think, but yeah.
No, I think it might be physiological, personally, because if you look at the olfactory senses, which is 80% of your taste, you might sniff something and you'll know it's off. So that's going to protect you. So even the sour taste is there for you to go, oh, wow, that's off. So if you look at sour, if you use sour as the example, right, you smell it, it's off. If you taste it, it's off. And obviously we have this tolerance. Some people really like the sour. So that part would possibly be genetic, because it's we've come from the northern hemisphere, so therefore we don't really like sweet stuff, and things don't go off so much in cold climates. So I would imagine it's more physiological, that somewhere along your path of genetics and environment and everything, as basically you taste sweet and you think this is going to do me no good. I really just think that's part of your taste sensations, and I just think it's physiological, because some people can really cope with a lot of sweet, and that would be environmental, because for over years and years and years people just start getting, you know, more and more sugary stuff. But it's also down to the food companies, and sorry to get a little bit political, but I was shocked to find out, say, a McDonald's milkshake, the first time I found this out, that it's got salting in it, right? I was like, well, why has it got salt in it? Well, that's because they want to hide how much sugar's in there. So the hyperpalatability of these sort of processed foods is working on your physiological responses, because if sugar's really cheap, so it bulks it out and it makes it addictive, but you don't taste that sugar in a McDonald's milkshake, not to the point where you go, wow, that is way too sweet. So they get you with the addiction, as we spoke about earlier. It gets that dopamine hit, but you didn't get that. I don't like the sweetness. So that's what I think. I think that you have a physiological response to all those different things, sour and sweet in particular, and it's just that we've lost contact with how we used to live. So now we eat stuff that's been deliberately blended to actually mess up your taste sensations. So we end up with some people that can love sweet stuff. I mean, I've had things passed to me and someone say, oh, taste that. What do you reckon on that? Now, they're not carnivore, and they've tasted it and think it's okay. And I put it in my mouth. I'm like, whoa, that is just like way too sweet. And they honestly say, it's not sweet at all. So obviously there's some epigenetics as well, because that's the same bit of food and we're in the same family, and they react so differently. But it's a great question. I don't know if you want to have a dive in, Colt. I mean, it's not really your area, is it? Do you want to have a pop at why that happens?
Yeah, I was just first of all, I was gonna piggyback off of what you said. I just wrote that down. I had no idea that milkshakes contain salt to hide the sugar content. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's mind blowing. I had no idea. Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback off of that, and I'm going to recommend. Thank you for your question, Charger Mopar. I'm going to recommend that you eat, by Steven's suggestion, the candy Sour Patch Kids. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't have a yes or no for that. Really, my response would, if somebody actually asked me that, I would just say, congratulations. Can I trade my genetics for your genetics, if that's the case? No, I've had a sweet tooth my entire life, and that's actually why coming to the carnivore diet has been such a deliverance from that, is because I can't treat it in moderation, and I don't think most people can. Some people can, but hey, if you're one of those people that doesn't even like sweet things, then why on earth would you eat anything that's sweet? I don't think there's anything that's sweet that your body that is necessarily good in and of itself for your body, and you certainly don't need anything sweet. So I would say eat, drink, and be merry. Yeah. You're great.
I think he's wired the right way, and I happen to know that person. I will not give you the name out, but yes, I think we're talking 4 decades of being a carnivore. So doesn't need sweet in his life at all. So I think that's where I'd like to be as well. I'd like to be able to get to the point where I just don't want anything sweet whatsoever.
Yeah, and that guy's my hero. Next time you talk to him, tell him that he is Colt's hero.
But don't give the names away. Come on. Right. Yes. So Colt, what got you into bodybuilding?
Art. Went to school for music performance, and after getting married and having kids and settling down a little bit, I was like, okay, music hasn't been my calling. Fitness is definitely my calling. It's something that I love. It's something that I miss playing hockey. I miss playing football, and being able to be on a team sport at that point in my life just kind of became unrealistic. I saw bodybuilding as a way that I could train on my own time, and a way that carried over into other areas of life in a way that other sports didn't. I liked it better in hockey because you win a hockey championship, great. You still look the same. you do a bodybuilding competition, you're in the best shape of your life. And is it sustainable? I don't know. It depends on how. It's certainly not sustainable to be 3% body fat year round. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But when you go through a show, you have to take every single bit of your diet under a very, very big microscope, and everything you eat has to be totally worth it. The way that you train, the way that you eat, the way that you live, the way that you sleep. Yes, there's a lot that has to go on a back burner during a bodybuilding competition prep, but the experience and who you become through the process is, in my opinion, very, very much a net win for anybody that really, truly wants to do it. So that, in combined with the carnivore diet, I think Robert Sikes said on page 20 or 30 of his book, Ketogenic Bodybuilding, that's the book that that's the book that really helped me to understand putting the two together. It's probably the single best competition book I've ever read in my entire life. I have all my clients reading it. Our new guy that wants to get his pro card right now, I told him we're starting on phase 1. Buy Robert's book, and we're starting on phase 1. So he says that resistance training paired with the ketogenic diet is the closest thing that we've ever found to the fountain of youth. And ever since I read that a couple of years ago, when I stumbled across his book in the first place, I just took it to heart, and I found it to be true. All the shows that I've done with high carb diet, if I can get lean enough, I'm really, really hungry and really irritable, and my sex drive is in the toilet. When I'm meat based and my fat numbers are, I'm still right now eating 300 grams of fat a day. I'm not shredded, but I'm pretty darn lean. And if I wanted to compete, probably just another 5 or 10 pounds is all I would have to lose to be able to do it and do a good job. But bodybuilding and the carnivore diet together, I just think I think they help each other in a lot of ways. I really do.
Yeah, I think the next guest, Dr. Kevin Stock, will be quite keen to agree with you that the carnivore diet and training, working out, is pretty good. It's a great mix. I just want to show you this comment we've got. Forget the bit that they don't get your name right here. It's Colt.
I'm so used to
it. But look at this. He looks 18. Surprising. He's already married and has kids.
Thanks.
And
yeah,
I'm
31 actually.
And I think carnivore does seem to reverse aging. I mean, I'm 59, and I deliberately wear this T-shirt that says I was born 1964 because people don't believe that, you know, I'm an old fart basically, and I can train and I can do things better than when I was 40. And I think you definitely look very young, and I think that's one of the things that commonly comes up as a benefit of carnivore. Strangely enough, I was going grey in my 40s, and now at 59 I've got some dark hair back, so that's good. Well, thank you for being a guest. It's really good. Where can people get hold of you?
Our podcast is, I would call it the heartbeat of everything we do. It's the supersetyourlife.com podcast, just like it sounds. And then we have a new show with Mark Ennis from Ireland and Jonathan Griffiths, the composition consultant from the UK. Both of them are carnivore bodybuilders themselves, and we have a new show pretty much every podcast platform called Carnivore Coach's Corner. Other than that, you can find me on Instagram at just my name, Colt Milton, ColtMilton.
Okay, cool. And so I'll bring Dr. Kevin Stock in, because what we've been trying to do is pass that baton from one guest to the next. And I think he looks ready, so let's add him to the stream. Hi there, Dr. Kevin Stock.
How you doing?
Hey, Kevin.
Guys,
doing very good.
Me. Excited to talk. Colt, is good to. I'm glad I got to catch some of the tail end of that.
Thank you. Nice piano.
Oh, thank you very much.
And do you know Richard Smith, Kevin?
Richard, I don't think we've ever met, but nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Pleasure.
Wow, very loud there. So, Colt, you're passing the baton on to Dr. Kevin Stock there, and hopefully we can just get this message across. The reason I'm stalling a bit is because we're coming up to halfway. We are 11 hours, 57 minutes into this. 11 hours, 57 minutes. And I've stood for the entire time. So I could never have done that. When I was 20, I couldn't have done that. When I was a high-carb, a semi-professional soccer player, I don't think I could have done it, and I would have been panicking about not eating. I haven't really eaten. So I think it's great that we've got somebody in their 30s. Kevin, you're what, in your 20s? And we've got Richard Smith there, who's in his 40s, and I'm in my 50s. So it's a nice array of ages. So, Colt, I'm going to dump you out now. Is that all right?
Sounds great. It was fun.
Colt,
Appreciate it.
been a pleasure. Absolute gentleman. Thank you very much.
Oh, appreciate it. My mom.
No worries, no.
My mom tells me I am. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Take care, man.